Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with our weekly recap of weekly Q&A video. We'll keep it in. It's season 14, episode 9. We do 2 of these a week. They're both weekly.
And you start off saying the same words.
Yeah. So this is different stuff to different people, but if you're on YouTube and you're watching this as a video, do you want to tell the people what they'll be watching?
Sure. So we messed up a little bit last 2 weeks ago, I think. It didn't upload properly, uploaded late. It ended up being in the next week. So the idea for this season was just, instead of doing it afterwards, to do it before the weekly challenge change is over and the person that we expect to be in the challenge. And if we upload this properly, which there's no guarantee that it does, what the upcoming challenge should be Yellow Lantern Hal Jordan.
Yeah.
And he's interesting. I think he was one of the missing challenge characters for a while, and he's back. I should probably check that in case I'm
wrong.
Yeah, I'm totally wrong. But
yeah.
I'll have to check it after, and I won't be able to fix this. But anyways, so he's
fast and loose today.
Yeah, we're playing fast and loose with any kind of rules or accurate information. So I'm playing him. He's not bad. I like it. It feels like his passive doesn't really come into play much. I mean, I don't notice it when I'm fighting Green Lanterns, and not enough people are tagging out against us to seem to make a difference. I don't like that he does so little damage on Special 1 to give the bleeding, but I like that it's a bleeding Special 1. That's my favorite damage over time. Special 2 is not bad. It seems like there's a decent amount of separation, but it never feels like the third hit lands properly on the person tagging in if you knock them out with the second. And the first hit of his Special 2 is not ranged at all, really. So most of the time it misses, even if you try to do Special 2 immediately upon tagging in, because Master's Death card does a hard enough shove that it puts you, if not out of the range, so close to like almost immediately out of the range that it's you lose a chunk of the damage, so it's not nearly as effective as it should be, or it could be, I should say.
So there we go.
Yeah.
And then there was some stuff in the real world that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah. So, I mean, congratulations to Pierre Poilievre on winning the by-election in, what is it, Battle something? Out in Alberta.
Yeah.
His by-election. I think, and he did actually get 80%, which is 80% of the vote, which is pretty typical for that region. There's only been one person, I think, in the history of that.
You're saying in like the last 100 years or something.
It's something
that
big.
riding?
Like that how long that riding has been in existence.
Yeah.
There's only been one person who won it for the Conservatives that got less than 80%.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little bit wild to me. And it was actually the guy who stepped down, but then I guess he was not a well enough known name. When he actually won it this time, he got like 83%. So Pierre Poilievre is a little bit less popular, but not popular enough that I get any kind of satisfaction of knowing that, for a guy who's basically wasting $1 million of taxpayer money because he couldn't win his own 20. How long was he in Ottawa for? 20 years?
I don't know.
20 years. Because people who got to know him over 20 years decided they didn't want him anymore.
Yeah.
So let's see what happens. I mean, it's interesting to me how quickly, political parties turn on their own. And I mean, it's not the worst strategy. Now that people know who Pierre Poilievre is, that there's a decent chance. I mean, I've thought this about previous losses for political parties, that there's a decent chance that there's going to be increased name recognition, so that there's a chance to turn the fortunes around and actually win next time. I mean, I would be very sad.
Pierre?
Yeah, for the not progressive Conservatives, just the Conservatives, right? I mean, to me that difference is crucial, because I think it's funny how much they sort of lean into the branding of Conservatives and the history of it, when really they are a relatively new party that has just taken the name. And they're not progressive at all. Well, not in any way that I guess seems to matter to me culturally.
Yeah. Or
even, I guess, fiscally. They're conservative for sure. Yeah. But they are also the Reform Party, the Alliance Party. Their interests are clearly that of Western Canada. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, I gotta say, I'm glad Mark Carney is doing some of the stuff. He's not perfect by any means,
Yeah.
but it feels like he's got the experience and the heft to actually take on some of the difficult things. I can tell you, I saw an article maybe a couple weeks ago about Justin Trudeau and Katy Perry going on a date.
Yeah.
I think, oh my God. I mean, if I were Justin Trudeau, I would be so glad that I'm not dealing with all the stuff that's going down now. He must be so happy to be out of office.
Well, hard to say. Hard to know his mind and his heart, right? Because it seems like certainly his life is easier now.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But the question is, you know, he was doing it for a while, how much he wanted it, right? So having an easier life might not be the same thing as having sort of a satisfied life, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe he liked being in the middle of all the stress and chaos, right?
All the times that I've watched politicians in North America, when you look at some of them started off really old and wrinkly.
Yeah.
But some of the younger ones, I think like
Bill
Clinton
and
Obama,
yeah,
it looks like they aged like decades while they were in power.
Yeah.
And I feel like the same was getting to be true of Justin Trudeau. And it's almost like when they leave, they drop a few years because they're just not nearly, I mean, and maybe that's me projecting, but I think, listen, I can't know what's in their head. Even if I had an inside line and I could talk to them.
Yeah.
It's not like they would necessarily tell me the truth. This is why, all right, so this is the funny part. You know the show Big Brother?
Yeah.
So it's not so much now, but in the first season, what they had was both the show, episodes every day.
Yeah, and then
you can watch
online.
Watch the feed online for 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And it was one of those few times, I think, I mean, they were making a show to be entertaining. And it's, you know, a lot of it is manufactured, air quote, reality. So it might be unscripted, but I think there's a lot of stuff that is planned. But it was one of the few times where you get to see what people, they would show you both what people would want you to believe about themselves, but then you'd also get to see footage of what they actually did. And you could compare and come to your own conclusions properly about some of the things that they were saying, which was interesting to me because very rarely do you get that, never mind on TV, but in real life.
Yeah. Because it's hard to be a character 24/7.
Right. And again, they are characters, sort of in a way, right? They are their own character, but not necessarily faking it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. The one other thing that I wanted to talk about today is kind of just apropos of nothing in particular, but we're just sitting down after having eaten a meal. I'm not sure if I've talked about Recipe 10 Eats before on the channel.
If not, this is a great time to do it.
I don't think so. But anyways, this is a shout out to Recipe 10 Eats. I've been trying to cook.
You guys spell that out, or we'll put that in the
recipe,
description.
You know,
yeah.
Phone will autocorrect it for you, and then tin, like TIN.
Yeah.
Like a tin of fish or whatever, and then eats.
Okay.
EATS. But I just want to say that, so me and my girlfriend, you know, have been trying to cook like one thing a week together, if we can help it. Sometimes more, but like one new thing. Or at our laziest, one of the things that was a new thing at some point during that one day a week, right?
Right.
And what I'll say is that since we've discovered Recipe 10 Eats, we have cooked almost exclusively that for a while. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you sort of a couple, I think I might have talked briefly about it, but there's a few things that in my mind make a good recipe. It is being well written and easy to follow.
Yeah.
It is to make something tasty, right? Mm-hmm. So that's sort of a judgment level for the cook. Yeah. If a better recipe is one that uses ingredients that are easier to source or that you are more likely to have, it is one that will give you common substitutions, and if there's anything to keep in mind for those substitutions.
Right, and the bigger sort of picture part of that is that the recipe that recognizes the potential limitations in different places for accessing certain ingredients.
Yeah.
Like that's key, right? Because you can say lots of stuff and say, oh, this is going to be great. But if you're not, I mean, we have the advantage of living in a relatively metropolitan city.
Yeah.
And having access to almost everything.
Yeah.
So it's actually, to me, that's the development. This is sort of what we strove for when we were doing the glitches too, right? Mm-hmm. That we would play around with it long enough. That's why we weren't always the first off the mark. but we played with it enough to get a feel for what the common kind of problems are and the variations, what would happen if you did things differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what I will say is that I think Recipe Tin Eats hits pretty much every mark, where the recipes serve well as a recommendation, right? If there's a recipe there in the first place, it tells me that it is at least solid, right? And usually good. As somebody who loves food, but also doesn't just love all food, right?
Right.
Who has tastes and preferences, it does a really good job of not putting anything up there that is less than good.
Right.
Which is not true for, I think, probably most recipes, right? There's I forget what the name of the reviewers are, but there was this reviewer that, it's a couple, and I found them first when they were reviewing Maddie Madison's cookbook, and they said it wasn't very good. And their whole thing is that they cook a certain percentage of the recipes in the book, and then they rate all of them. And it's sort of the hit rate of the recipes that matters more than if any one recipe is good, because they're not rating recipes, they're rating cookbooks, right?
Right.
So I would say that
well, they're not rating only recipes. I mean, literally they're rating recipes.
Yeah.
But it matters.
But the review is for the cookbook.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
So I'll just say that Nagi of Recipe Tin Eats is a really good recipe writer. It has good taste, has good sort of technique in writing. I think with a lot of recipes, there will be moments where you'll go, oh, it doesn't say exactly what to do with this or whatever. There will be sort of imperfections in communication and stuff lost a little bit. And with Nagi, it's never been bad enough that I've felt like, I didn't know what to do or I couldn't fill in the gaps. Like I never felt like I was totally flying solo. And they're just quite good. So it's obviously not the only thing that I'm going to cook, but I would say that if anybody is interested in cooking, that it hits all the check marks for me for what makes a recipe good and for what makes me want to come back to a source. And it's been like 90% of the recipes since the first one for our weekly has just been, oh, we have this protein. Do they have anything for this protein? Oh, do we have this? And, we've made some interesting stuff. We've made some stuff that I think I might not have otherwise.
Right.
And we've also made a bunch of stuff where the only thing we need to buy for it is like the main protein and the main veggie, which is basically like the minimum amount that you could ever possibly buy. And, we could have theoretically bought nothing if you had pre-stock the proteins, right? There's no reason why we couldn't have had that.
But that's not necessarily reasonable to, when you take into account costs. Like this is the thing, right? It's like collecting tools. Once you got a good toolbox and a collection of tools, you're ready for almost anything.
Yeah.
And it's the same with having a stock pantry. Like the thing is, you go through produce and proteins pretty quickly, but you're sort of your toolbox of all the spices, certain staples. Once you've done that, it becomes so much easier.
And I'll say too, the other thing is that a lot of the recipe, when it calls for stuff, for example, like in a can, it'll usually be in the ratio that uses the whole can.
Right.
The ratios in the recipe are logical and reasonable. Where like the worst you'd get in Recipe Tin Eats one is maybe you get like you left with like half an onion or something like that. You don't get a hugely...
I hate when recipes give you like a weird amount and they say use half a can and you're supposed to save it and cook the same thing again the next day. I mean, it's not an insignificant consideration when part of the appeal of cooking at home, besides, playing around, big part of the appeal is the cost savings.
Yeah.
And if you end up wasting stuff, this is what I always hate about tomato paste and tomato sauce. Is how often, if you use half a can, if you try to save it in the fridge, a lot of times it gets moldy around the edge. I hate that.
Yeah, and then if you freeze it, it's like not that usable. There's like no real good answer, I think, for what to do with it. Other than maybe if you can stuff as a hobby, you could like recan it.
Or put it in a jar.
Rejar it, yeah. You do the thing where you have to like... What's that thing where they put it in like a hot water bath and they like sterilize it?
Oh, but it's not just sterilizing it, right? What they do is because it's hot, the air is expanded, and when you cap it while it's hot, and then it cools down, it contracts and it creates a suction. To seal it. That's like canning. That's still canning. Even when you use jars, it's still called canning.
But yeah, you have to get into recreational canning to save it properly. Yeah. Anyways, do you want to get into the first question this week?
Actually, I just saw something else that happened. I finally got in the mail. So there's this thing called Otovimo Pekko. It is a tool created by some mad Finnish scientist who has an interest in hand strength. Yeah. And so I don't know if I've mentioned before, I think out of all the different things, the specialist kind of movements, right? The compound movements are the most important. And technically, grip strength is a compound movement because you're moving across a bunch of joints. It's not just one joint. But it's very much has a lot in common with isolation exercises, and it uses very small muscles. There's not a lot of sort of caloric burn value in doing grip strength training. However, I think grip strength is probably one of the most important things you can do as far as maintaining functional strength for your life, because there's very few things where you won't need to have decent hand strength to be able to move things in your world. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just so useful for everything. It's one of the most useful. I mean, even when you start losing mobility and you can't get off the toilet, what do? They give you grab bars. Yeah. So if you look at scientific studies, when they look at a proxy, when they try to find a proxy for overall muscle strength, they use grip strength. Oh, grip strength is correlated with mortality. So that the weaker your grip strength is, I mean, it's not really strongly correlated, but that there's any correlation at all is interesting to me. That the weaker your grip strength is, the more likely you are to die. The stronger your grip strength is, the less likely you are to die. So anyway, so this is it's basically a little, almost like a fidget toy, where it's one of the few tools that improves your dynamic thumb strength. Oh, that's the one that you showed me with the thumb. Yeah, it's almost like a thumb clicker, but really hard. Yeah, and like heavy and like knurled. Right. So it's I think is it steel? I don't know. But steel, it's not like aluminum? Knurled for comfort. It's like knurled for grip. So knurling, for people who don't know, it's like that like crosshatch pattern that lets you grip on stuff. So if you have any sort of machined metal around you, your stuff will often be knurled. It's that sort of like rough surface. On a barbell, it's the part that's not smooth. It's the part that's got the grip. Right, and it's got a nice. It's knurled, and it's not like soft knurled. It's like knurled for real grip. Yeah, it's like knurled for exercise equipment. Right. So if you buy it directly from him, I think it's like 40 or 50 euros, but shipping from Finland is like another 40 something euros. So I got it from Arm Assassin in the US, who imported like a bunch of them at once, and it finally came. And I like it a lot. I've incorporated my exercise into my routine because that was my 1 weak link. There's a lot of stuff I do for my grip strength, but your thumbs are not, they're used in pinch, but there's not a lot of sort of fun pinch things or toys that you can take around with you so you can do it throughout the day like you can, say, with grippers. Mm-hmm. So that's neat. I'm just, I'm going to see what difference it makes, but if there's going to be any difference, the same way, the chunky part of my hand on the pinky side is nice and big and thick from, strengthening. I'm hoping that that's going to do the same for the thumb side part, the thenar eminence. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Fun stuff. Keep us updated. Okay. Do you want to get into our first question? Yeah. Hopefully not our only question. So Gamer of the Eternal War says, what does Kimota mean? And there's a bit of a thread here. Do you want to read the first one? Because this seems like something that you would say. So Jim Gong 1034 says, it means glory to Canada, which I love. Girthus 89 says it's how they sync up the audio. And then Gamer of the Eternal War comes back to comment, what do you mean? Replying to Girthus 89. And then they replied back saying, sorry, I interpreted that as you asking why they say it. No idea what it actually means. So it's interesting because it never would have occurred to me, but Girthus is actually right. At one point, we did use that literally to sync up our video or audio when we were filming this in different locations. Yeah. Well, we would sort of double sync, right? Where the first thing we would do is we would just count down. Right. And then one of us would count down, and then we would say start at the same time. And it would sync. It would approximately sync, right? Because when we're in different places, the latency would be such that you can't really perfectly sync both. You kind of have to go for an in-between. Right. And also latency like moves a little bit as you record, but that would be your best bet. And then you'd kind of have to resync at the end. You'd go listen back and see how bad it was, right? How far off it was. But we are in the same room right now. Sure. There's no sort of audio syncing necessary because it's one mic, right? Right. If anything, that you
you'd have to figure out what to do to somehow split our audio from one location as opposed to mix it together.
Right, but it is neat, actually. It hadn't occurred to me that we literally did use it for that, but that wouldn't have been an answer I would have even thought to consider or say.
Yeah. So, Jim Gong, that is obviously a joke, right? Glory to Canada.
But I like it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still pretty good.
And then Girthus it's an educated guess. It happens to not be right, but it was right at one point.
Yeah.
Right? Although it tended to be easier to sync up the beginning of the audio than the end. So I think you'd use both.
Yeah.
But it would be a secondary marker.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. But we've explained it before, but we can go ahead and explain it again here.
It feels fun to revisit
Briefly.
it, and it reminds me of just how long it's been since we've done this. So there was a comic book. I'm directing this towards the listeners because you know all this already.
Yeah.
So there's a comic book written by Alan Moore, drawn by Gary Leach, that was Marvel Man in Warrior magazine in the UK. And it ran for as one story in a what do you call it? Not a digest, but one of those collections called 2000 AD.
Yeah.
And black and white. So Eclipse Comics brought it over to North America, and because of copyright issues, they couldn't use the name Marvel Man. They renamed it Miracle Man.
Yeah.
And it was very popular. It was really interesting. And Eclipse went out of business, and you're thinking, wow, that's a long story. What the hell are you talking about? So anyways, I want to introduce something a little bit new, because I think what we've talked about is the Kimota is basically atomic backwards.
Yeah. And it's the phrase that he says to turn back and forth between his superhero version. And so...
And his normal man alter ego.
Yeah. And so when we were making this, I was pretty young. And the thing that... There's stuff that I know. And I think YouTube, like almost any other media in any other genre, has a grammar to it. There is, and it can get as granular as things like video essays, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they have their own internal structure and format, and it's for good reason, right? But so as the listening audience, you sort of build up an understanding, and you know what you expect, you know what the norms are, and information is communicated with these norms. It's tropes in movies when you start to see... when you hear the right kind of music, when they linger on a shot for a certain amount of time, and it brings attention to something, and you realize that it's going to be relevant later.
Right.
There's all this extra sort of information that gets communicated to you that's a little subconscious. And so when we were starting this, I was young enough. I kind of knew what YouTube was supposed to be like.
Right.
And so one of the things is, well, you got to say something at the end of the video. How do you don't just say bye, right?
You could,
but
but it would feel wrong.
You totally can. But for what YouTube was, a lot of
Right.
people have outros. They have something consistent. Right. You have the intro is the same, the outro is the same, and on a functional level, it makes it easier to start and end something.
Right.
Right. Your audience expects it. You expect it, and you don't have to say, well, goodbye, I guess.
Right. Right.
And you don't have to feel that sort of... it reduces the amount of friction for the listening audience and for the speaker. And so there was a point where I was like, we should have something we say at the end. And
so the timing of everything so this brings us back to Miracle Man.
Mm-hmm.
And because Eclipse went out of business, Todd McFarlane actually bought all of Eclipse's sort of physical things when they went bankrupt. And he assumed that he would have the right to Miracle Man and nobody else. But that's just sort of the physical pages.
it's not the IP.
Right. And so Alan Moore gave the IP to Neil Gaiman.
Mm.
And so it was a long drawn-out legal battle between Neil Gaiman and Todd McFarlane. And brought into that was the fact that at one point Neil Gaiman had written an issue of Spawn, had introduced Angela, and was using that as leverage to say, so hold on, this is a brand new character. I have rights to Angela. How about I think something to the extent of, how about I trade you this for that? Like, there's value in this, and you just let go of, what you think you've got on Miracle Man.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, when it was around that time that we were doing the channel looking for something
Yeah.
that it was reprinted. I mean, I had issues of it, but not a complete run.
Yeah.
And I picked up the books and I had you read them.
Mm-hmm. So I was reading them. I'm like, this is comic related. And the
It
sort
was
of...
cool.
Yeah.
It was good.
It was really well written. And so my pitch was, it's comic related. It's something to say. It's not popular enough that other people really know it.
Right.
Probably. If they do, it's a cool reference, but they probably won't.
Right.
And thematically, it's our transformation word, right?
Right.
When we end the video, we stop being BDCKR gaming and we go back to being just boring old us, right?
Right.
So the pitch was that we say that at the end, and for the people who know it's interesting, it's thematically relevant, and in a very sort of naive way. It's silly. It's fun.
It is fun.
Yeah. And I say naive, obviously not as like a negative thing here, but just, I mean, like on the surface, right? There's no sort of like deeper meaning to it. There's something that's a little sort of self-consciously silly about saying we're transforming, right?
But we are. It is funny because we are transforming. At the end of the video, we're transforming from YouTubers back into normal people. I thought that was absolutely like appropriate, brilliant, fun.
Yeah.
Happy to do it.
And more than anything else, it was just something to say, because I really was. I was like, YouTubers say something at the end. And I think one of the things, there's been a lot of ways in which we really haven't done this the way that you're supposed to. But I think...
Well, and intentionally so.
Yeah, but I think there's, to some extent, it is fun to do things like how you're supposed to as a YouTuber, which is, you know, a while back when I did that editing project just for fun, I was like, let me do this like I'm a YouTuber, right? Because I think it's more useful, instructive, and interesting as an exercise. It's easier for me to evaluate if I'm evaluating it off of a known sort of checklist.
What kind of views are you getting on that? Is it still...
Oh, like no views.
Okay.
No, well, because it's one video. It's
I was just curious about whether there was still any kind of relevance where people were looking up the topic. Yeah, that's okay. You don't have to get into it. I was just curious. It hadn't occurred to me until just now. I'm trying to
think. It's like a fart in a tornado. I was trying to think. There wasn't a metaphor or simile that was appealing to me right away. Yeah, but it did it exactly as well as I expected, which is not that many people saw it. Some of the people who I showed it to personally are basically the only people who saw it, and I got basically the feedback that I liked, which is, that I'm really happy with, which is that here are all the issues that I had with it. You know, people said it was a little over edited. It was a little rough around the edges. There was too much going on here. There was too little going on here, but it was interesting enough. It was watchable. It felt like a reasonable entry into the genre of thing I was trying to make, where if somebody saw another video that had an interesting topic by me after that, that they might click on it in their discovery feed, which is all I wanted from it. Right. I consider that like a success, and like a pretty strong success, just for given how limited my skill set is and how, you know, your first thing is not going to be great, right? Sure. I think, and I said it at the time, I'll say it again. I think making stuff is really good. I think developing a skill related to an interest you have is really good. And I also think that you can only really properly evaluate how good something is if you have a completed thing in some form in front of you to evaluate. Well, it's half done. There's always going to be, that's not done yet. I'm going to come back to that later. Right. And it's only when you put something down and say, this could go out into the world like this, right? It doesn't have to be the thing that you actually release, but it has to be something that you sit down and go, this is releasable. And then instead of, I'll get back to this later, it's, I would want to fix this before, I need to fix this before it goes out or before I stop working on it. And then it's like a different thing and you're able to better judge, I think. Right. And that's a mix of, you know, obviously I have very limited experience myself. A lot of people telling me that when I'm hearing, you know, from literary conventions and stuff, when authors are talking about their process and how they get better. So I'm taking other people's words for it. And I've also found it to be true in my own much more limited experience. Right. Yeah. So that's what Kimota means. I guess that might be our only question this week, because we're just running right up on 30 minutes. Good as time as any to finish up. Yep. Make something, I guess, is my recommendation for you this week. If you're listening to the end, and if you already do, good on you. Make something. let us know in the comments if you're listening right now. If you have
kind
an
of things you
intention to
make,
make
yeah.
something, the kind of stuff that you already make.
Put a link in the comments, and we will. If YouTube locks it, we'll release it.
That's true. If you've got something interesting that is a creative pursuit or outlet that there's some paper trail or existence, if you're willing to share something, I would absolutely.
Yeah, as long as it's not something. I mean, we reserve the right not to release it, but
as long as it's like not hateful or whatever, or like appropriate.
Yeah,
Gotta be brand compatible. Okay, to finish up, we'd like to give a huge thank you to our lovely patrons on Patreon. That is Michael Devries, Irvin Ruiz, Hoshi127, Nora Klimek, and Miguel, who are supporting us on the credited level. I guess that's the second thing I could say, which is support people who make the stuff that you like. And it doesn't have to be us. I am shocked and so grateful that for some people we are people making something that you like, that you want to support financially. That's awesome. But in general, support people making stuff that you like. And also, if you can help it, support the people that your individual support is going to be more than a drop in the bucket for, right? If there's anything weird or small or sort of niche, right, that gets a lot less support. So, and supporting doesn't just mean financially. It means, participating in the community, and also means making stuff, right?
Because
part of that.
When you say that too, part of it is that the same support that you give to somebody big versus somebody small, it has an outsized impact when you do it for somebody who's small. And you'll find, I mean, again, maybe it doesn't matter to you, but it matters to me, is I feel like when I make a difference, it's cool. And if you can make a bigger difference, even cooler.
If it's something that you want to continue existing in the world, there will be things that your support will directly matter more for.
Yeah.
And I think that's a worthwhile thing to evaluate. And I do mean that in the sense of just like keeping the community alive. So sometimes just making stuff, or interacting, or just saying this is cool is all part of it. Anyways, and that brings us around to all the people watching this. Thank you so much for watching this as well. Supporting us however you do. We'll see you next time.
Kimota.